We all want to believe that our parents did their best. And maybe they truly did. Maybe they gave everything they had with the knowledge and tools they had at the time. But what happens when the decisions they made, the words they spoke, or the ones they never had the courage to say, the way they showed love or their complete absence continue to affect our adult lives? What happens when we look back and realize that their influence still follows us, shaping how we love, how we trust, and especially how we treat ourselves? There's a quiet kind of pain that many people don't talk about. It's the pain of being hurt by those who were supposed to protect us. It's difficult to admit, even harder to face, because it hides under layers of excuses and cultural explanations. We hear things like, "That's just how it was back then," or "They had it rough," or "They didn't know any better." And while those statements might be true to some degree, they don't erase the emotional pain left behind. That pain stays. It subtly affects how we connect with others, how we set boundaries, and how we view our own worth. Carl Jung, one of the most important figures in psychology, spent much of his work studying how childhood experiences shape the human mind. He believed that what happens to us early on leaves a lasting mark on our subconscious. According to Jung, what we don't bring into conscious awareness continues to guide our lives from the shadows, and we'll mistake it for fate. He believed that many of these hidden forces come from our relationship, or lack of one, with our parents. Maybe your father was emotionally shut off. He was physically there, but never really present. And now, as an adult, you find it hard to open up emotionally. You're scared of being left. Or maybe your mother was always critical, and now you live with an inner voice that keeps whispering, "You're not good enough." Maybe you learned early on to be a people pleaser, to hide your emotions, your wants, your needs, because every time you showed them, you were met with disapproval, silence, or even punishment. These emotional wounds don't vanish just because we get older. They don't disappear just because we've learned to survive in the adult world. They stay buried, hidden in the darker corners of our mind, quietly affecting our feelings, our choices, our relationships. That's why no matter how hard we try to move on, we often find ourselves stuck in the same patterns, reliving the same pain in different ways again and again. It feels like life is pulling us into an endless loop of emotional déjà vu. But here's something important to understand. Healing doesn't begin with blaming others. Healing begins with awareness. We can't go back and change the past, but we can change how we relate to it. Forgiving our parents doesn't mean we're saying what they did was okay, or that the pain didn't matter. It means we're choosing to stop carrying the weight of it. It means we're choosing to break the cycle, so we don't unknowingly pass it on to our partners, our children, or even ourselves. So how do we start this process? How do we actually begin to forgive and heal? First, we need to see where the pain really comes from. We have to face the fact that what we experienced as children has shaped who we are as adults. Only by fully acknowledging this can we begin to let go of the emotional patterns that are holding us back. Just because we grew up doesn't mean our childhood disappeared. It's still there, echoing in our thoughts, playing out in our relationships, hiding in our fears, and repeating in our behaviors. Childhood is where our first beliefs about love, trust, safety, and self-worth were formed. If those beliefs were planted in a home filled with neglect, fear, judgment, or abandonment, then those roots still run deep inside us, even if we don't realize it. Jung explained that these early experiences stay with us and keep showing up in our adult lives without us even knowing. The environment we grew up in, the love we had to earn or didn't get, the praise we longed for or were denied, the boundaries that were too strict or didn't exist, becomes the blueprint for how we experience life now. We may not remember everything that happened when we were young, but our emotions, our reactions, and our habits are often echoes of what we went through. Think about it. A child who believed they had to earn love by being perfect, by being quiet, by never getting upset, will likely grow into an adult who constantly tries to prove their worth. Someone who fears rejection, tries too hard to be liked, and believes deep down that their value lies in what they do, not in who they are. Not because they made a choice to live this way, but because their subconscious mind learned this is what love looks like. Or think about a child who grew up in a house where mistakes led to shame, not understanding. That child might grow into an adult who's terrified of failing, who sets impossible standards, and who has a loud inner critic always saying, "You're not good enough." What started as a way to survive becomes a lifelong pattern, not because we enjoy suffering, but because the subconscious always returns to what feels familiar, even if it hurts. This isn't about blaming our parents for everything that goes wrong in our lives. They had their own stories, their own traumas, and their own limited understanding of what love really means. But it is about facing the truth, that our early experiences have deeply affected us. And if we don't bring that truth into the open, we'll keep repeating the same emotional patterns again and again. So how can we tell if our childhood wounds are still active? That's where the real inner work begins. These wounds, though unseen, are not silent. They speak through our behaviors, our relationships, our fears, and our insecurities. They show up in our difficulty trusting others, in our silence when we want to speak up, in the way we feel undeserving of love or happiness. They appear in our perfectionism, our fear of being abandoned, and the way we push away happiness when it finally arrives. Time alone doesn't heal these wounds. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. Only by looking inside, with honesty and kindness, can we start to understand where our pain comes from and how we can heal it. This journey is not easy. It means going back to places we've tried to forget. It means feeling things we've avoided for years. It means unlearning things we were never meant to believe. But it also means taking back our power. It means no longer living under old programming, but instead writing a new story, one that is conscious, free, and based in self-awareness. Jung taught that the unconscious doesn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, it finds ways to come to the surface. And if we don't face it willingly, it shows up in our emotions, our patterns, even our dreams. The unconscious doesn't stay quiet forever. It waits to be noticed, and if we keep pushing it down, it will speak louder, through confusion, emotional storms, and repeated pain. One of the first signs that a wound hasn't healed is how strongly we react to certain things. Think about this. Have you ever found yourself feeling very upset, maybe even exploding, over something that seemed small or unimportant? Chances are, you weren't just reacting to that one moment. You were responding to something much older, something buried deep inside. For example, if someone gives you a simple critique and you suddenly feel angry, hurt, or like you need to defend yourself, it might not be about what they said. It might be because, when you were a child, you learned, through words or actions, that love and approval had to be earned, that your worth was tied to being perfect. So now, any kind of criticism feels like a threat to your value. It awakens that old feeling of being a little child again, desperate to be enough. Another sign of unhealed wounds is the way we repeat the same patterns in life. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That means if we don't heal what hurt us, we'll keep living it, again and again. It may come back in different ways, through different people or situations, but the pain will feel familiar. People who grew up with a deep fear of abandonment often end up in relationships where they constantly feel the need to prove. They are lovable, they may stretch themselves too thin, accept emotional neglect, or fall for people who are distant and emotionally unavailable. Unknowingly repeating the emotional emptiness of their childhood, others may find themselves getting in the way of their own success, because somewhere deep inside they believe they are not worthy of happiness, that joy and contentment were never meant for them, but there is an even deeper way that our unconscious speaks to us through dreams. Jung believed that dreams are symbolic messages from the unconscious. They are like letters from our inner world, showing us what our conscious mind refuses to notice. A dream where you're being chased might reflect a hidden emotion, or an unresolved fear you're trying to run from. Dreaming of a crumbling or deserted house might represent a part of your inner self that feels abandoned or damaged, an inner structure falling apart and in need of rebuilding. Even seeing authority figures in dreams can point to lingering emotions linked to your relationship with your parents. If you're someone who constantly looks for approval from others, it might be because as a child you never truly felt accepted by your parents. If you feel a constant need to control everything, maybe you grew up surrounded by chaos and your nervous system learned to connect safety with control. Everything we do now is tied to what happened before. Every reaction, every fear, every automatic behavior is connected to a moment, often long forgotten, that shaped how we understand the world. But seeing the wound is just the beginning. Healing is much more complicated. There's something that makes healing even harder: the shadow. The shadow is the hidden part of our mind, the part we deny, ignore, or don't want to face yet. It still affects us quietly, but strongly. When we think of our parents, we often go to extremes. We either put them on a pedestal, telling ourselves they did their best, or we blame them completely for our pain, but the truth is somewhere in between. Our parents were people with flaws, carrying their own unhealed wounds. They too had shadows, they too had fears guiding their actions, and without meaning to, many of those shadows were passed on to us not by genes, but through emotions and behavior. We inherit more than just physical features or personality quirks. We inherit emotional habits. We inherit silence, shame, emotional coldness, anxiety, overprotection, and the struggle to show love openly. What they couldn't heal often becomes what we are left to face, and unless we choose to confront these things, to shine light on what has been hidden, we will keep repeating the cycle. We will keep asking why life feels heavy, why our relationships cause pain, and why peace seems out of reach. Carl Jung described the shadow as the unseen part of our mind, those pieces of us we've pushed down because we learned to think they were wrong, shameful, or too hard to face. These are bits of our personality that we've buried in the unconscious, usually because at some point in our lives, someone, maybe a parent, a teacher, or society told us those traits were bad. But what we bury doesn't disappear. It lingers in the background, quietly shaping our actions, our connections, and even how we see ourselves. This same pattern often shows up in how we view our parents. Many of us grow up ignoring their faults, not because we don't notice them, but because accepting them hurts. Admitting that our parents messed up would mean realizing that the very people who were supposed to protect and love us might have also caused harm, and that's a painful truth to admit. In other cases, we go to the other extreme, turning our parents into villains and holding on to anger like it's a shield. But here's the twist: even when we resent them, we're still emotionally tied to them. That resentment keeps us connected to their influence, still reacting to the same pain left unhealed. Yet the family shadow is more than just how we see our parents. It's also found in the habits and patterns we've taken on without knowing it. Maybe we grew up with an emotionally distant father, and we promised ourselves we'd never be like that. But if we're completely honest, how often do we pull away emotionally? How many times have we built distance in our own relationships without even seeing it? The reality is the things we most dislike in our parents often reflect what we've taken in ourselves. It's easier to spot their mistakes than it is to look at how we might be repeating them. It's simpler to say, "My mom didn't know how to love," than to ask ourselves, in what ways do I struggle to show love? It's easier to blame our dad for being too critical than it is to see how hard we've become on ourselves or others. The shadow isn't just what we resent in our parents, it's also what we've unknowingly absorbed, what we repeat, what we turn into. And until we bring these hidden truths into the open, we stay stuck in cycles, living through the same pain, making the same choices, becoming what we swore we'd never be. When we don't recognize our shadow, we end up projecting it onto others. This is where the idea of projection comes in. It's one of the most quiet but powerful ways our unconscious pushes us to face what we don't want to admit. Jung said that we project onto others the parts of ourselves we can't accept. In other words, what we refuse to admit inside us, we start to see in the behavior of others, in our partners, our friends, even our children. Projection is the mind's way of protecting us from facing ourselves. It makes the issue look like it's coming from outside, but this also keeps us stuck. When we don't bring our wounds into awareness, we keep repeating them without knowing it. Think about this. If we had very demanding parents, we might become adults who are constantly hard on ourselves, never feeling good enough, never letting ourselves rest. Or we might be overly critical of others, repeating the harshness we once experienced. If we grew up in a home where love was unpredictable, where some days we felt cared for and other days we were ignored, we might now find ourselves drawn to chaotic relationships, attached to emotional ups and downs that feel strangely familiar. We might talk about feeling unloved or abandoned, without realizing that we're picking relationships that feel just like the unstable love we once knew. This is not random. The unconscious is drawn to what it knows. Even if it hurts, there's an important exercise worth trying. Think about the traits in your parents that upset you most. Were they controlling, emotionally cold, distant, or dismissive? Now ask yourself honestly, in what ways have you picked up those same traits? Maybe not in big obvious ways, but in small daily actions, in how you talk to yourself, in how you treat those around you. What we dislike in our parents often becomes part of what we carry inside, and what's most surprising is that many of us end up attracted to people who remind us of our parents, hoping somewhere deep inside to rewrite the story, to heal the old wound by living it differently. But healing doesn't come from reliving the past, it comes from breaking the pattern. Seeing the pattern is just the beginning. Real healing takes more a conscious journey toward what Jung called individuation. This is the path of bringing together all parts of ourselves to become whole. It's how we grow beyond the limits of our past and become who we were truly meant to be. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It doesn't mean making excuses for the pain or pretending it was all fine. Healing means our history no longer rules us. It means taking back our power, our voice, our identity. Individuation is about becoming your truest self. It's not about being flawless, it's about being complete. But this journey doesn't happen by itself. It needs intention and inner work. We have to be ready to face what we've hidden for years. We need to go inward and see the younger version of ourselves still holding wounds that were never acknowledged or comforted. There are 4 key steps on this road. Admit the wound without staying in victim mode. We can't heal what we won't face. This means accepting that our childhood left marks, some light, some deep. It's not about blaming our parents forever or getting stuck in anger. It's about naming our pain. But the wound is not our full story. We are not just hurt children. We are more than our pain. Accept the shadow without fear, what we try to deny in ourselves often. This journey is one of the hardest, but also the most life-changing. Forgiveness not as a favor to our parents, not because they earned it, but as a gift we give to ourselves. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or downplaying the hurt. It's not about saying it wasn't painful. Forgiveness, at its core, is about freeing ourselves. It's the moment we stop dragging the weight of what happened. The moment we let ourselves be free. Carl Jung spoke about integration, a deep internal path that asks us to look at our personal story with total honesty, without hiding behind victimhood or denial. It's not about making ourselves out to be powerless or pretending things didn't happen. It's about facing the truth exactly as it is. In doing so, we stop seeing our parents as perfect heroes or labeling them as cruel enemies. We begin to view them for what they really are, just human. Humans who have their own struggles, their own pain, and their own emotional limits. Often, we hold on to a quiet anger we don't even realize is affecting us. It hides, shaping the way we think and how we connect with others. We cling to the belief that our parents should have acted differently, that they should have known more, done more, and loved us more deeply. And while those thoughts are real and come from true emotional needs, the reality is, the past can't be changed. Waiting around for emotional fairness or for an apology that may never come only adds to our suffering and keeps us stuck in that pain. Real forgiveness is not about convincing ourselves that what happened was okay. It's not about wiping away the truth. Forgiveness starts when we decide that we no longer want that pain to have power over our lives. It begins when we make the choice not to let the past continue shaping our present. Someone who had an emotionally distant father might spend their life filled with anger, feeling unloved, always wondering why they weren't treated the way they needed. But that person also has the ability to pause, to reflect, and to ask a deeper question. Who was my father before he became my father? What kind of story shaped him? What emotional pain was he carrying long before I was born? Jung reminded us of something powerful. What we don't work through will keep showing up in our lives. If we stay tied to our anger and blame, that same old pain will likely repeat itself in our behavior and relationships. If we keep waiting for our parents to admit the pain they caused, we are still giving them the power to affect our emotions and healing. Taking back that power means choosing to turn inward. There is a meaningful exercise that can support this process. It begins with writing a letter. Be raw, be truthful, be open. Say everything you've ever wanted to say. Speak from your hurt, your rage, your sorrow. Let it all out. Then, on a second page, write a reply, but this time as if you were your parent. Not to excuse what they did, but to try and see things from their view. Try to imagine what they might have felt, what struggles they faced, what emotional pain they carried. This process isn't about saying what they did was fine. It's about releasing the emotional baggage we've held for so long. It's about understanding that healing is a road we must choose to walk ourselves. In the end, no one else is responsible for our healing. That task belongs to us. And there's one final truth that can change your entire life: learning how to turn your pain into wisdom. Because true growth doesn't just mean letting go of the past. It means using that past to build a life that's more aware and more honest. You can't undo what happened, but you can decide what to do with it moving forward. Childhood leaves its marks. Some are easy to see, while others are buried deep inside. We spend years trying to figure it all out, trying to understand why our parents behaved the way they did, why they hurt us, and why they didn't give us the love we needed. But eventually we reach a turning point, a choice. Will we stay trapped by our story, or will we rise above it and change that pain into growth? Carl Jung taught us that real change comes when we stop avoiding our darker sides and start embracing them. The same is true when it comes to our past. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's not about living in bitterness. It's about viewing our past with fresh eyes. It's about turning every painful memory into a stepping stone for transformation. That childhood wound, the one that made you feel invisible, unwanted, or not good enough, can become the very thing that pushes you to become better. If you were never emotionally cared for, you can learn to show yourself love and care now. If you were told you didn't measure up, you can become the one who speaks kindness to yourself without needing anyone else's approval. If your childhood home felt cold or distant, you now have the power to break that cycle and become someone who loves deeply and mindfully. Nothing you went through was wasted. Every struggle, every tear, every moment of heartache holds within it the chance to become your greatest strength. What hurt you doesn't need to be what defines you, but what you decide to do with that hurt, that can define everything. So now the real question is, what will you do with what you've just learned? If this message touched something within you, that's no coincidence. Something inside you is ready to heal, ready to grow. Maybe you can't change what happened in your childhood, but you can absolutely change how you relate to it now. And in that decision, in that shift of perspective, lies true freedom. If this message felt meaningful and you think someone else could benefit from it too, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Subscribe to the channel. Tap the notification bell so you never miss a new message. Help us reach more people who are on their journey to heal, to grow, and to reclaim their own lives. Always remember, your past is not what defines you. Your decisions do. You hold the power to turn pain into purpose, to turn your wounds into wisdom, and to transform your story into a light that guides others. Keep moving forward. You are not alone, and your healing has already begun.